जाओ पहले उस आदमी का साइन लेके आओ जिसने मेरे हाथ पर ये लिखा था, उसके बाद मेरी बहन तुम जिस भी कागज पे कहोगे मैं उस पर साइन कर दूंगा.
Clearly you're not talking to me because I'm not your behan. But let's do the introductions first. Welcome to the Shabby And Man podcast. We are partners, parents, podcasters, broadcasters.
And everything else in between. Namaskar, dosto.
Now, do you want to tell everybody why this filmy dialogue? Why are you starting with this dialogue? What are we talking about this time?
This time we thought we'd, I've noticed in India that when you join a bank and all, they say know your customer. It's a new thing there, they want to know you.
Yes.
So
and they want your Aadhaar number.
Exactly.
Yes.
So I thought know your podcaster. I'll ask a few questions. You ask me a few questions.
Oh, like know your fellow podcaster.
Yeah.
Oh, like that. And actually, we thought about this because recently a TV channel came to us and we were asked to do a little interview for camera, which we did. And it was about two people from different cultural backgrounds coming together. We won't dwell too much on that because we've spoken a lot about that already. But You
mean you say tomato, I say tomato?
Yeah.
You say potato, I say potato?
Yeah, I say culture, you say agriculture. More like. लेकिन उस पे ज़्यादा ध्यान ना देते हुए, what we wanted to talk about was, you pointed out that very often people play this Mr. and Mrs. game, right? Which is how well you know your spouse. Now, we don't really want to do a how well we know each other because we're not really in competition. But we thought it would be interesting for us to talk about some exciting things like movies and books and holidays and live events and important events in our lives.
You heard me. I borrowed one of my favorite dialogues.
Yeah, that is why you borrowed a dialogue, because today we're going to talk about some of the things that
That was, by the way, it was from Diwar. And most people do that other one from Diwar.
Yeah.
मेरे पास क्या है? क्या है तुम्हारे पास?
In fact, you said that even आज तुम खुश तो बहुत हो गए. His monologue when he's in the mandir is from Diwar, right? I always thought it was Zanjeer.
No, it's Diwar.
See, the thing with Salim Javed and Amitabh Bachchan, it's such a deadly combination. They've got so many quotable quotes, as it were, and all of them coming from the angry young man. Sometimes it's very easy to get
I think there was a
up.
period of like 4-5 years with Diwar, Sholay, Don, or kya tha?
Trishul. Yeah,
Anup Ranjani.
Yeah. Andha Qanoon. I don't know if Andha
Qanoon
was
in the 80s.
Yeah, I don't know if it was Salim Javed again. But you're right.
That had Rajnikant in it.
Yeah, there was a spell where Amitabh Bachchan and his angry young man dialogues, each one was as memorable as the next. So we thought we will revisit our past and also cast
yet again
cast a glance at the future as well, and look at some of the things that we've really loved over the years. And the funny thing is that when people ask you this, which is your favorite book, or what is that one film which left an indelible impression, I think that changes with every decade, don't you think? What we thought of as the ultimate film or the ultimate book in the 20s.
Did you say indelible impression?
Yeah.
This is how you used to speak in Kanpur or Indore.
Don't you know what indelible means?
I do, but it took me by surprise.
Oh, well, there's a lot more that might take you by surprise. So let's talk about some of the things that have influenced us individually, collectively, before we knew each other, after we knew each other, got married. And like I said, I think this changes in every decade because you add that much more experience. But then, of course, some things remain eternal favorites. Let's talk about films. Let's start with films. Hindi films, English films, both. Bollywood filmon mein, tell me some films that you grew up watching that you were really influenced by, or dialogues that you know off by heart to this day.
It was that period, and that probably late 70s, mid 80s.
See, you're one generation before me.
No, it's not like I saw them in the cinema. I saw them on VHS many years later.
Oh.
Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But
you're still one generation above me.
But all those Muqadder Ka Sikandars and Do Paanch and...
Do Duni Paanch. That was a comedy, right? I remember Shashi Kapoor, Amitabh Bachchan playing two teachers.
Yeah, Do and Do Paanch it wasn't called.
Do Duni Paanch, I think.
That must be in Bangla.
Do Paanch.
You must have watched the Bengali version.
Okay, so on with it then. So...
And those sort of movies from that period up to probably Coolie. So I remember seeing them in the cinema because I spent that period of my life in India. So every Sunday, whatever, we'd go and see a movie. Me and my friends.
Can you tell me some dialogues from certain films that may have stayed
everyone knows the Don one. 11 मुल्कों वाला. What is 11 मुल्कों वाला?
Don का इंतजार तो 11 मुल्कों की पुलिस कर रही है.
That's right.
मगर Don को पकड़ना मुश्किल ही नहीं, नामुमकिन है.
हाँ. I like the other dialogues which are not that famous. Like I remember there was this one which says that इंसान अपनी बुराई छोड़ सकता है काका. He says काका in it.
What, राजेश खन्ना?
Yeah. इंसान अपनी बुराई छोड़ सकता है काका, लेकिन इंसान की बदनामी हमेशा उसके साथ रहती है.
लगता है you speak from experience, huh? Anything else?
That was from Don.
Huh.
That's good enough for now. Oh, you mean English movies?
No, English movies. Yeah, English movies. I know you have many. You have many.
Yeah, I mean everyone has that Marlon Brando one, not from Godfather, but from On the Waterfront. You know you do know that I went for acting lessons for a brief period in my life.
Yes.
Yeah, so now I'm deaf. Anyone is interested? I remember one of the things that we had to do, one of the monologues. The only word I learned there was monologue, was the one that Marlon Brando says to Rod Steiger on the Waterfront. He goes, "You don't understand, Charlie. I could have had class. I could have been a contender. I could have been somebody. Instead, I'm just a bum. That's all I am." ताली बजाना तो बजा ले.
I'm sure जो सुन रहे ताली जरूर बजाएंगे. Excuse me. So, I don't know. Any other films? Everybody quotes from The Godfather. Make you an offer that you cannot refuse, right? And
you tell me some English movie that
I would have to say, I've mentioned this so many times.
That you borrow dialogues from.
My family is very big on crime, whether it is crime fiction, whether it is crime movies. So growing up, either crime or those mysterious kind of things like Casablanca, Rebecca, we were very big on those. So,
that Casablanca line is actually a myth.
Play it again, Sam.
I don't think that you say play it again, Sam.
She actually doesn't say it in so many. She doesn't say play it again, Sam. She probably says play it one more time or something like that. Then, of course, of all the gin joints in the whole world, she had to walk into mine, And there's so many from Casablanca. Then, of course, there are dialogues from... I
would have thought your favorite movie is Sound of Music.
Sound of Music, it is. I mean, I know it off by heart, so I can't even quote like one dialogue. I knew it back to front. More recently, much more recently, from say 20 years ago, Notting Hill, I'm just another girl standing in front of just another boy asking him to love her. Julia Roberts, Hugh Grant, that kind of thing. So, dialogues, they stay in your mind. But when it comes to Bollywood dialogues, I think even my favorite ones have to be, if they are not from Dil Chahta Hai and Lagan and more contemporary hits, they have to be from the golden period of Javed Akhtar and Salim.
I was just going to say,
Salim
I've
Khan.
heard you on air, on radio.
Yeah.
Maro dialogues so many times.
Yeah.
I still think you do them very well. Just for our listeners, could you do the Sholay Mausi one for me?
Sholay one is, Sholay mein to itne hai, कि बसंती, तुम्हारा नाम क्या है बसंती, to हम अंग्रेजों के ज़माने के जेलर हैं, which is Asrani, to,
No, I'm saying to the Mausi one.
The Mausi one is where Jay has gone to Basanti's Mausi, Veeru ka rishta leke. And he thinks that, obviously he's trying to present his friend as this suitable candidate, but obviously it is having the exact opposite effect because he's sitting with Mausi and Mausi saying, "अरे बेटा, लड़की ब्याहनी है, कोई कुएं में तो नहीं ढकेलनी, पता तो चले, लड़का काम क्या करता है, कमाता कितना है." So अरे मौसी, एक बार शादी हो जाएगी तो कमाने भी लगेगा. So she says, क्या? अब तक नहीं कमाता? हाँ, अब रोज जुए में तो जीत नहीं सकता ना, और एक बार शादी हुई तो कोठे में जाना भी बंद. So with every dialogue that he's adding,
he's putting his foot in it.
He's putting his foot in it, and he's making it worse and worse and worse for Dharmendra's character, of course. But there's such a memorable. It is a film that is back to back quotable quotes, memorable lines.
We had so many friends who could do that chakki pisoing dialogue.
Gawalo, chakki pissing and pissing. Buriya chakki pissing.
And now a lot of our friends had mastered Shah Rukh. Do you remember that?
Yeah. That's true. Somehow, I don't know what it is, because Shah Rukh is my time, when you're at university, out of university, when you're really watching Friends every weekend, like you said, in those impressionable growing up years. That is when Shah Rukh was at the height of his fame.
What is that famous one? बड़े-बड़े शहरों में छोटी-छोटी
छोटी-छोटी, हाँ, बड़े-बड़े शहरों में ऐसी छोटी-छोटी बातें तो होती हैं. Kiran and all those ones. Somehow Shah Rukh dialogues, I find them, they must have been very impressive at the time. But more than his dialogues, I think it is his characters, the roles that he did, the kind of films that he made popular. That's what stayed with me. So over the years, so it's pretty much these are the films that we have gravitated to. I don't know why you're not mentioning Govinda here, because I thought you were extremely big on Govinda films as well in the noughties.
I was, but
which is something I couldn't stand.
I can't remember a dialogue. I mean, I loved and absolutely loved the dialogues of Govinda, Kader Khan and Shakti Kapoor.
Yeah.
When that trio was there.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Oh my God. Must have been a case of opposites attracting. What about books? Let's talk about books. My God, we've spent so much time talking about just films. What about books? What are some of the books that you've read which you feel
they keep changing? I mean, I can't go back and read a book, which is very sad. Most people love to read the book again.
Yeah.
I can't really. Or maybe the odd self-help one, which I can dip into, like my Deepak Chopra's one, which I mentioned many a times before.
Yeah.
Or maybe Richard Bach's Jonathan Livingston Seagull or something like that, which you can read once or twice. Otherwise, once I know the story, I find it hard to reread it. This is something you love doing, though, isn't it?
I do. And I get the impression that you've actually, I suppose we're all guilty of that we end up reading the books that you're meant to read at a certain time in your life, like the beatnik authors, like all
you're right. I went through that beatnik phase. When I was young, I went through the Agatha Christie phase.
Yeah.
Then I went through that P.G. Wodehouse phase. So you have those phases.
Whatever your contemporaries are reading, what people are talking about.
Now I'm going through that phase where I love reading Indian authors or South Asian authors. It doesn't matter what especially if they're books about food and travel and all. I really gravitate.
But I think that you gravitate more to non-resident Indians, or are you just as partial to people who are writing in India, English in India?
Yeah, I don't really know any non-resident Indians.
And I thought you always pick up books by people who live in America, Canada, UK, here, there, and they talk about their roots and their South Asian identity and all the rest of it. But yeah, I mean, essentially,
obviously you're mistaking me with someone else.
Yeah, clearly I am. With myself, probably, because I do love reading a good book on travel, and Peter Mayle is my ultimate benchmark. Peter Mayle is an Englishman who spent 25 years in Provence, and he wrote about his daily life in France, in the south of France. He's no longer with us. He died 5-6 years ago. And I have every single book that he wrote. I've read it all from cover to cover, and I think that is the way to express your love for a country, through your appreciation, through your tongue-in-cheek analysis often of how it is different from where you grew up, and yet at the same time the beauty of the place which charms you and therefore drew him and his wife to
that reminds me of a book I picked up 25 years ago in India only. At the time he wasn't that well known. Since then he's famous Penguin author and lives in England half the time. I'm talking about Pankaj Mishra. He had a book called Butter Chicken in Ludhiana.
I thought you were going to say Vikram Seth.
No. So Pankaj Mishra wrote Butter Chicken in Ludhiana, which I remember buying from a big shop in Delhi called Crossroads. Do you remember that shop?
Yeah, of course, it was a chain.
Yes, a chain. And
you think his fame has really... he became globally famous since then? You're saying at the time he wasn't so well known?
He became famous because he was the editor in Penguin India who picked up Arundhati Roy's book and...
got her small things.
Yeah.
And made her what she became.
Yeah, I think. At least the Indian version, which then came here. So then he became quite famous himself.
Speaking of Vikram Seth, I came to A Suitable Boy very, very late. I still remember, I was probably far too young when the book actually came out, and my mum and my sister and everybody read it, and it is a bit of a road stopper. It was huge.
Just last week or the week before last, he celebrated his 70th birthday.
Yeah. So this was one of his earliest works, and this is what put him on the global map. And for the longest time, I found it...
93, 94.
Yeah, it was too fat for my liking, the book. But I warmed to the story afterwards.
It had a lot to get through. It had so many different families.
No, but that is why he won so many awards for it, because the research was absolutely meticulous. It is set in pre-independent India.
And from the top of my head, I remember, was it the Chatterjees, the Khans, the Mehtas?
Yeah,
So also the Mehras.
Yeah. So it is about the Mehras finding their daughter a suitable boy to marry, and then the different men who appear in her lives and in her life, and scenarios and situations where her heart says one thing, but either common sense or culture or her family is saying something completely different. What does Lata Mehra eventually end up doing? That is what it's all about. And I remember we, again, talked about this a lot of times, because you brought me a brilliant BBC audio play, which had some fantastic names.
I can't remember if it was Lata Mehra, Lata Chatterjee.
Yeah, not Lata Chatterjee, Lata Mehra. So, that audio play is what really got me interested in the book again. And then, of course, we saw a TV adaptation recently 2-3 years ago as well, which was brilliant. So yeah, even books, I mean, like I said, I always go back to crime fiction. People accuse me of having a vivid imagination, and I owe it all to my love of Sherlock Holmes, which was passed down to me by my dad. A good mystery, a good story. I'd never been to England when I read it as a little girl. But even now, when I close my eyes and when I think of Arthur Conan Doyle's description of
East London?
Not East London.
I think it's very different than what you imagine.
The countryside or Dartmoor, or all these little places, all these little pockets in beautiful, quaint England where horrific things happen. I think words have the power to magically transport you to any corner of the world. And if you read a book that resonates with you, if you like a story that's well presented, they can be nothing better.
You could have got the same effect by watching Midsummer Murders.
Yeah, but that's a shortcut, isn't it? See, you still have to make that effort. I always feel that is the reason I say I love radio, not merely because I'm a broadcaster, because I think radio has the better pictures. When you're watching television, it puts those images into your head and you're forced to look at certain faces and scenarios. But when you're reading something in a book or when you're listening to someone on radio, your imagination conjures up the images, which I think is very beautiful.
Let's talk about music.
Yeah.
I mean,
you have much more to talk about than I do.
I'm talking about not music per se, but as in
live gigs kind of thing.
Going to music concerts.
Performances.
Yeah. I mean, I think in my lifetime, over the years, I've been very lucky enough to see people who unfortunately are no longer around now.
But big names.
But left an indelible mark on me as well. I'm talking about people like Michael Jackson, Prince. In the late 80s and all, there used to be people playing Wembley quite a lot. The first concert I ever saw was James Brown, and then he was quite old at the time, and then I think he passed away a few years later.
And you said that you've also seen Elton John and talking about people who are legends who are around now, of course. Did you ever see Queen? You did, Live Aid, right?
No, I didn't see
you
Live
didn't.
Aid. I was in India.
Okay. But of course, more recently, since we've been here together, since we've been married and back in London, we've seen so many, from Bob Dylan to the Big Bang to Rolling Stones, some of the, biggest gigs, going.
Look at this week in Hyde Park.
We've been, the ST.
We've got Rolling Stones, we've got the Eagles, we've got Adele, we've got
Ed Sheeran,
we've got Elton John,
Guns N' Roses,
in football stadium.
Yeah, but this year is extra special because after 2 years of COVID, everyone wants to go out and party. But you're right, I think nothing beats the vibe.
That's just this weekend, plus Glastonbury last weekend.
Nothing beats a live concert. And I'm actually going back to my impressionable years, my university years, which is where I developed my love of classical Indian music and especially instrumental music.
Which instrument?
For the Santoor, Pandit Shiv Kumar Sharma, who sadly passed away recently. For the Masuri, it was Hari Prasad Chaurasia. For the Sitar, Amjad Ali Khan Sahab. Tabla, Zakir Hussain. Vocals, so many, from
Rajan Sarjan
Mishra to Kishori Amonkar.
I've seen loads of these myself as well.
Yeah, Kishori Amonkar, Rajan Sarjan Mishra, then Bhimsen Joshi has passed away. Absolute legends, and these were they would do the university circuit in India. It was called SPICMACE, Society for Promotion of Indian Classical Music and Dance. I
saw a lot of them at, I forgot the name now, Kamani
Auditorium. Yeah. And I always talk about this one concept that Times of India organized, which I found absolutely brilliant because it gave us a reason to stay up all night as well. It was called the Sangeet Surya Parikrama. So it started at 5 in the evening and it finished at 5 a.m. the next morning. And each person who came on, whether it was on the vocals or an instrumental, they sang a rag which was appropriate for that time of day. So with each rag, with each performance, you were given a little insight into what they were singing, why they were singing it when the moon had just come out, or why they were singing it in the Raat ka Pehla Peher jise kehte hain. It's such a brilliant way of learning about your culture, your heritage, things that are intrinsic to who you are. Without
remember by any chance, but I remember hosting this. There were quite a few of us on stage. I don't know if you were there, but it was under the ruins of horse cars.
No, I wasn't there. I remember you hosted this.
And
was it a Sufi concert kind of thing?
I can't remember, but it went all over India, and it was phenomenal the amount of people who watched it.
Yeah. That way I feel that we are so lucky that we've seen these concerts in India and here. It's not that, I know London is where the entire world wants to come and perform, and it has just as much diversity in terms of the musicians who play here from all over the world. But I think thanks to living in India, we got to see the best of all the Bryan Adams and Spice Girls and all these people who made it there, and we got to see Sufi concerts, and we got to see classical instrumental stuff, which, if you've seen the masters in action live once in your lifetime, it just changes you as a person forever, I feel. But that's it. I think that we should talk about one last thing.
Which is what?
Which is holidays. Tell me about some nice holidays that come to mind.
I can't think of any that come. We've been to many places. Lots come to mind, but
it doesn't have to be us together. Maybe you growing up.
In the future, this is just to show you that I'm getting old now.
Yeah,
speak for yourself. I would like to go on a cruise one day.
Oh my God, you are getting old.
I just like to sit back, see 6-7 different cities.
Can I just say that there's a very famous cruise company, I'm not going to take their name, in this country, which only allows people of a certain age. You make that age bracket, I don't still. I'm very happy to say. Just. So yeah, cruise. You know what I see as my ideal holiday to top all holidays? Right now I can't afford it. I doubt if I'll ever be able to afford it. But it has to be.
Even with all these ads you do?
Even with all these ads I do. It has to be a trip on the Orient Express, because it is the ultimate railway journey. It is the ultimate luxury in traveling on wheels. Not only do you pass exotic destinations, you're constantly fed that Murder on the Orient Express narrative in your head, especially if you've been an Agatha Christie fan. You think of all the wonderful places where the train stops. You think of all the possibilities.
Where is it from? It's from Istanbul to Vienna, or is it from Paris to...
No. Istanbul, and then via. It does a lot of...
To Paris, maybe.
Europe, and it does a lot of that, Turkey and all that as well. It's absolutely fantastic. So, not just the range in terms of what you see outside your window.
But what about the Indian equivalent? Isn't that Maharaja
Palace on Wheels?
Palace on Wheels.
Yeah. See, Palace on Wheels come most of the destinations. That is mostly Jaipur and all. It is Jaipur. Again, it's meant to be extremely exotic and beautiful. We may have seen most of those cities individually.
The Golden Triangle, as I like to call it.
But I think, it would be quite an experience. But for me, it has to be the Orient Express. That is my dream journey. But until then, we've got loads of other holidays to look back on, and
you better keep saving then.
And think about. So that's that. It wasn't so much about how well do we know each other, but looking back on what has really left an impression, and things that we still remember to this day very fondly. I read somewhere, now that I'm approaching my birthday, I may as well tell people. I read somewhere that when you get to a certain stage in your life, your mind automatically filters out entire chapters from your life. You forget about holidays that you've been to, you forget about weddings that you've been to, you forget about important, significant things that at the time seemed extremely important to you. You completely forget about these. Why? Because apparently your emotional memory only holds on to things which continue to have a significance in your life. So, if somebody turns around and says, oh, do you remember 35 years ago when we went there?
Where are you going with this? Do you remember our wedding?
Of course, everybody remembers their wedding. Who doesn't remember a nightmare? Ha ha ha. But a stressful event is what I meant. But that's not what I'm talking about. That is like a life-changing event. But I'm saying that not something as significant as that. But, at the time, if you've been on, say, a boys' holiday, or I've been on a girls' road trip or somewhere, and you feel, oh my God, nothing can top this. There comes a time in your life, when you've moved on, when you've added so much more to your experiences, that your mind subconsciously obliterates these memories.
No, but I have to add a caveat to that.
Which is?
When you meet certain friends, old friends, after a long time, you automatically go into that space and say, do you remember this?
Yeah.
Do you remember what we did then?
Yeah, that's true.
And it's crystal clear again.
Yeah, that's true. Maybe that's what old people say. That's a sure sign that we are aging. We're heading into the twilight years. But, that's it. I think we're gonna sign off now. And thank you so much to all those who continue to download this podcast and bump up our numbers. Manish Sahi's favorite pastime is looking at how many downloads, and we're nearing 50,000 now. And we would just like to say a big, big thank you to all those people who tune in from around the world and give us so much love and give us the encouragement to keep coming back to this every 2 weeks. Until then,
ciao.
See you later. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye now.